Hey everyone, so my name is John Muller, and in this video I'm going to share with you my hot take on some hot topics. Okay, so I've been a Buddhist monk, I've been a professional counselor, and I do online business right now. I'm a marketing coach and business coach and conscious leadership coach, and I kind of have my finger on the pulse of the whole spiritual entrepreneur community, and I want to share with you my take on some of the hottest topics in this community. All right, so let's just get started. First of all, I'll just qualify myself real quick. So I was a Buddhist monk for 5 years. I stepped away officially in 2019, and I kind of had some of the hardest months of my life after stepping away, and basically was able to get a business going, get a digital marketing agency going, got a spiritual coaching business going, and I eventually launched a coaching business where I was helping other conscious entrepreneurs to grow their business and make money. And basically, I started having 5-figure months very consistently. So this turned into $30,000 months and beyond. And so I want to share with you my take on how to be a spiritual entrepreneur and make money in today's society, and also have a spiritual practice, have a very strong spiritual practice in today's society. Okay, so here we go. I'm just going to jump in. These are in no particular order, and I just wanted to share with you an enlightening perspective, hopefully, on some of these topics. Okay, so number one of the hottest topics in the world right now, I think, for the spiritual community is narcissism versus being an empath, right? So what is being a narcissist and what is being an empath, and how do these relate to each other, if at all? Okay, so I can say for a fact, I've had tendencies of both, of being an empath, very sensitive. Like empaths are kind of feelers, right? They're very sensitive. We feel things, we're intuitive, but we mostly feel other people's energy. We also, the challenge for an empath is boundaries, right? So you kind of lose your boundaries and you kind of end up taking on other people's stuff. So it's really not a good way to live your life, but it is a good superpower, okay? I believe that conscious leadership solves this equation of the dangers of being an empath, the dangers of being a narcissist. I think conscious leadership solves both, but let me just explain a bit more. So being a narcissist, there's different ways of describing what this is, right? So there's more colloquial ways of describing it. It's like slang. It's like slander, really. It's kind of like a cuss word that the spiritual people use. It's like one of the most dark, intense words that a spiritual person can use when they call someone else out. It's kind of like hate speech, actually, because when you're calling someone a narcissist, you're basically saying there's nothing good about this person, and that's obviously not true. But a lot of us, it's very extreme language, and I don't actually believe that it's that helpful in many cases. In some cases, I think it is appropriate. So now I come from the world of psychology, and in my training in psychology, I took a weekend course on personality disorders with my mom, who's also in the field of psychology and therapy. And we learned from a world-renowned expert named Dr. Gregory Lester, something like this, Dr. Lester. And he has a couple books, and he just is one of the most renowned experts on personality disorders. And he also works a lot with narcissists. And it's actually his favorite type of person to work with because he finds them hilarious. But he also is very, very good at helping narcissists and people with personality disorders. So I'll give you sort of the classical definition, or at least the classical take, which is a personality disorder is something that's generally harder to cure than other things. The success rate is lower with normal therapy, and is characterized by being extremely rigid. It's a very rigid way of thinking. Any personality disorder is characterized by rigid thinking, rigid sense of identity. Okay, it's like getting locked in, whereas most people are flexible. If you go to this party, you act accordingly. If you go to this professional zone, you act in this way. If you go here, you act like that. Like, we're all very flexible, and that's a good thing, right? In my spiritual training, they say like a bodhisattva, or someone who's very close to attaining enlightenment, is is infinitely flexible. We become whatever other people around us need us to be, right? Without losing, it's coming from a place of strength. So being flexible is a very good thing. And so being rigid is obviously the opposite of that. And so someone who truly has a personality disorder is going to be very rigid in how they think. And in this case, it's like a very self-centered way of thinking, right? That's sort of my take on narcissism. It's just like, it's very, very self-centered. It has a very small level of self-awareness, right? There's not really a conscience there, or at least there's just such a low level of self-awareness that they can't even see how selfish that they're being. Okay, so one thing I would add is that narcissists generally have they're perceived as having power, right? That's sort of how it's characterized, I would say, as being an abuse of power. Someone who is labeled as a narcissist, or they're called, you're a narcissist, is someone who's generally misusing power, and they're not ashamed of that even, and people notice it. And the empath is someone who feels this. They feel everything. They're connected. These two types of people connect, and they connect to each other. And in a lot of ways, they mirror each other. Empaths are not necessarily that different from a narcissist. In a way, it's really just two sides of the same coin, right? They're both feelers, right? I had a previous business partner who, well, let's just say potentially several previous business partners, but one in particular, who many would probably agree was like a narcissist. And, he had some sense of power, right? But he also was very selfish. He admitted he was selfish, but he was also very kind too. But I guess the thing is, he was intuitive with energy. He could feel energy just like an empath does, except for he used it to take advantage of people rather than to help them, right? So a bodhisattva is someone who they tune into the situation and we try to help people. Being of service, being a conscious leader, like the word conscious means that we're very self-aware and we're trying to help people, and we kind of see what's best for them, or at least we see what appears to be best for them, and we try to help them. So a conscious leader is trying to help people and wielding power in a way that helps people. Whereas a narcissist is someone who's using their intuitive gifts and their ability to feel people out and feel energy. Is kind of like a vampire. They use it to leech life, to take advantage of people, to steal things, to steal energy, to steal power. And a lot of this is coming from like a darkness within themselves, or an inability to feel whole and complete in and of themselves. And so they latch on to other people and other beings in order to siphon light and power from them, right? But let's just say like an empath who so occasionally would get into like a victim mentality. They also become like a leech. They become like a black hole, like it just swallows light. Like when someone's in a victim mentality, there's nothing you can do that helps them. Everything that you pour into them is like pouring light into a black hole. It just disappears, it gets swallowed up, okay? And so an empath in victim mode is a scary sight because they feel things so intensely. And they just it's just like a star that turns inwards on itself and swallows up everything. So we've got to be careful about like being self-centered can express itself as being a victim mode black hole, empath, or it could express itself as being like the psycho narcissist vampire that feels people out and takes advantage of them and tricks them. But either way, it's just self-centeredness combined with the ability to perceive and feel energy, basically, is what it is, combined with basically a way of using power. Either you use power, you try to hurt people, or you use power to try to build yourself up, or you use your power to feel like a victim, or whatever. But in both cases, there's going to be a sense of arrogance and pride on one hand, and then insecurity and feeling less than on the other hand. And this is something my meditation teacher taught me. Basically, everyone who is proud is also insecure, and everyone who's insecure is also proud. They're two sides of a coin. And so someone who's externally trying to act so arrogant and whatever, on the inside they feel insecure. And someone who feels very insecure often will cover this up with a sense of, pride and arrogance, right? And so empaths and narcissists are both going to be doing this, I'd say. And so here's a couple tips. If you find yourself locking horns with a narcissist, it's actually not that bad. From what I found, it's actually very helpful to face it head on rather than to try to run away. Like, they're going to gain power when you run away. So a lot of people have the tendency to want to escape, right? According to the personality disorder framework, narcissists end up with someone they call anxious avoidant. So the anxious avoidant personality disorder is also a type of personality disorder. It's someone who kind of gets anxious and they avoid problems and whatever. It's like very indirect. They won't look at anything directly. They always look away. It's very passive. And yeah, that type of person ends up with a narcissist a lot, okay, they say. And this is what Dr. Gregory Lester talked about a lot. And so, this doesn't work. Obviously, that's not a good model because they have power. As soon as you start to run away, think about like facing off with a dog. If you face off with a dog and you start to run away, guess who has the power now? The dog. And now they can chase you and now you're vulnerable, right? But if you stay face to face with it, at least now you have a shot. And normally they respect that. The interesting thing about rapport is we build rapport by matching somebody's energy. And so I found I was able to match my business partner's energy, right? He was very aggressive. Some people would call him a narcissist. He was definitely self-centered, and he was definitely a wielding power in an abusive way, for sure. And he would admit that he was self-centered. He claimed it, and he was not regretful of it. And we just had a different value. I don't value that. I value being service-based. But he was not shy to admit that he was self-centered. But basically, I built rapport with him, not through, at first maybe I kind of looked away, vibrated away, kind of tried to avoid, but I figured out quickly that it doesn't work. And so I started facing the situation, facing him, matching his energy. And immediately he started liking me more, right? Because we start to respect people who match our energy. We just like them. That's what rapport is. If someone moves the way you do and they talk the way you do, you just start liking them more automatically. It's like, you can't even explain it. It's just what happens. And so, if you find yourself locking horns with a narcissist, lean into it. Be direct. Don't be scared. Fear is the only tool that they have against you, actually. If you actually think about it, there's no way for a narcissist to harm you, right? In the same way that no one can really harm you, basically. There's like, in terms of like mental harm, psychological harm, energetic harm, people can't actually do it unless we give them an in, right? And fear is how a narcissist is able to control us. Anything that you are afraid of, they will find, like a shark. A shark can smell blood, right? Sharks can smell fear too, I believe, right? Just like a dog smells blood, right? Just like me, when I'm coaching people, I can sense my way in order to help them, right? And a lot of us develop that sort of superpower. We can sense things, and a narcissist will find your fear and they will get in it. And basically fear only exists in the darkness. Fear and darkness always go together, because it's interesting. We're actually not afraid of anything that's realistic. I mean, we're talking here about the paralyzing fear, the neurotic fear, right? If you see a bear, you're gonna run. I'm not talking about this type of thing. I'm talking about like mental fear, like the paralyzing fear, the stuff that you just shudder when you think about that person, right? They're actually not going to hurt us that much, but yeah, they will if you give them any way in, and the way in is fear. Okay, fear is like think about being in a dark room and believing that there's a boogeyman in the closet. Right, I use this example a lot, but it's a good one. Imagine that there's a boogeyman in the closet and that you are a little child, that you're afraid of the boogeyman, right? Now that child might have a paralyzing fear, but the only reason that fear can be sustained is because the room is dark and the door is closed, okay? As soon as you open the door or the closet door and turn on the light, what happens? Well, you realize that there wasn't anything scary there at all. And the fear goes because the belief in something that wasn't there goes, right? The belief in something that wasn't there. The fear is a belief in something that isn't there. Fear is only sustained due to a belief in something that isn't there, which is only possible to do if you're either not looking or if it's just completely dark. Okay, so this is kind of an important point. I'll try to say it again, right? The fear is essentially a belief in something that isn't there, but that is only possible due to not looking or to just being completely in the dark. As soon as you remove the darkness, the fear cannot stay. Just think about any time that you've had interactions with a narcissist. I want to give you my personal 100% guarantee. The only power they have over you are in the areas where you are afraid of something. Essentially, like, this person was abusive to me, and I have this trauma now, and I'm afraid of talking about it because it might make my family look bad, or it might make them lash out at me, or I might lose my kids, or they might lose something bad, and I don't want to, there's a fear, right? Essentially, it's basically saying, I'm scared. I would do the right thing, but I'm scared, is what that means, right? And the thing is, they actually want to be exposed. They actually want to be exposed. That's the interesting part. Narcissists want to be exposed. They act out, against people who have a lot of light because they actually want to be exposed. They want to be healed. They understand it's a virus. It is a deadly disease that they have, and they want it to be taken away, and only the light can cure it. Only the light can cure their disease. Light cures everything. If you were to think about a rotten log, a rotten wooden log, and it has like bugs and maggots in there and bacteria is growing in there. Why? Because it's damp and dark, right? And as soon as you crack it open and expose it to the sunlight, guess what happens? It all is purified, right? It all is purified, and the bacteria, the sunlight, kills the bacteria, and there's no way for more bacteria to grow. And basically the only bacteria that remains are in pockets that are still dark. But if you were to make light go into every little space, everything is healed, everything's purified. And so think about, it's like a disease that's affected the heart that a narcissist has. And it's a parasite. It's like multiple levels of parasites, I believe, that are on their heart. And they want to get rid of it, actually. It's actually harming them. It's not really their fault. They have like these entity parasites that are attacking them, that are fixed on them, and their own self-centeredness and their own fear and insecurity keep it sustained, right? So they try to call attention to it. They seek out people who can bring them light. They actually want to be healed by it. But those parasites will function to keep them in the dark. That's what they don't want to lose their power source. They're feeding on this person's light, right? That's how they exist. And so they're going to try to keep this person from receiving anything, but that's why they lash out against empaths, so they can get healed. And so think of it like this. And so they want to be exposed. Being exposed means you bring the light in, right? And why would you not expose something? only because you're scared, right? And so fear sustains it. And the irony is that fear also is easily maintained in the darkness. That's why when you just talk to people, whatever has happened for you, just talk to people about it. Light will start to come in just during those conversations, and you'll start to realize that, actually, not all friends will help you with this. I would help you with this, but basically, it's not that bad. It would not be that bad to expose everything. Like we only have one life. Are you gonna wait until you're 50, 60, 100 years old before you decide to let the lies out? Right? Lies, again, get sustained in the darkness. You cannot sustain a lie in the light. It's impossible because it's not there. It's a fiction about something that isn't there. The boogeyman in the closet isn't there. You do not have to remove the boogeyman to remove the fear, right? That's not required. There's no need to remove the boogeyman, but the child doesn't know that because they believe in it, right? It's the same thing with us. The thing we're scared of isn't there. We don't have to get rid of it. We just have to turn on the light and see, and then we'll see that it wasn't there originally, okay? And so one more analogy is like, if you're riding a boat and there's big waves that are coming, if you have the boat aimed away from the waves or like perpendicular, not perpendicular, if you have the boat kind of aimed away from the waves could topple you over, right? And that's like facing a narcissist from being avoidant. But if you aim the boat at the wave, you just kind of ride the waves and they don't actually hurt you. It's the same thing. If you go face to face with narcissists and just try to release all your fear, there isn't a lot that they can do, to be honest. And if you don't have fear, that's where they have leverage. I want you to think about that point deeply. The only areas where they have leverage over you, where they are controlling you, where they are making you do stuff, where they are manipulating you, where they are getting their way, where you are going against your wishes or your needs or your wants or your boundaries. This is a mic drop moment. The only areas are where you still have fear, right? That's the only place where they have power, where they have leverage. Okay, it's like handlebars. Your fear are their handlebars that they grab and control you with. If you didn't have any fear, they'd have no way in. It's just light. How can you control the light? If all you were light, you can't control that. They can't twist you. There's nothing they can do but be healed by you, right? And so the areas where you have fear are the areas also where you have darkness, right? And they sustain each other. So we need to learn to not have any fear anymore. Okay, I'll make another video about that. But essentially this is a good start. The whole boogeyman in the closet analogy and just being willing to expose everything, being willing to look at everything. When you start to see something within your own mind that makes you want to look away, look again. Keep looking back. Be courageous. Be more courageous. Keep looking at whatever you see within yourself. There's no way it can harm you. Trust me, the stuff we're afraid of aren't even there most of the time. Okay. So I had down on my list boundaries, self-love. Of course, we need boundaries, we need self-love. So if you are realizing that you are either empath or narcissist or both, or you flip-flop, or you do the victim mode, overfeeler thing, you do the manipulating other people, abusing power thing. Either way, we just need to try to learn to love ourselves and have the right boundaries. Now, self-love is interesting. Remember how I said insecurity will build an armor of pride to protect itself. Now, insecurity, again, is a type of fear. Would you agree? Insecurity is a type of fear. It's a fear that we are weak, pathetic, not good enough, not worthy. We're a pipsqueak. We're really small. We're pathetic. We are so bad, incompetent, whatever, right? Those are essentially identities. So insecurity is usually just a fear-based identity. And it's thinking that we're like a really small self, okay? And so insecurity wants to put on armor, right? To protect us, and the armor is pride. And pride is the worst because nothing comes in. But as long as pride is very difficult to deal with because it doesn't let in help that it needs, right? So it's hard to get help when we have pride. And so what we want to do is help a person and help ourselves to kind of lower that armor of pride and try to be more vulnerable and transparent, and then address the insecurity itself. And the insecurity, as I said, is, since it's a type of fear, right? Would you agree? It's a type of fear. What does that mean? It means, in this case, it only thrives in the darkness, and it's believing in something that isn't there. And so we want to try to turn on the light. We want to try to keep looking like, who am I? Who am I thinking I am when I feel insecure? Who is that person? Oh, I feel like I'm really not good enough, and I feel this, I feel like I'm not worthy. And like, it just try to get a mental image. It's like shining the light on this. It's good to get a mental image of what that is. And then just remember, it's not there. Because it's fear, it means that what I'm believing in doesn't exist. This small self is the boogeyman in the closet. It's literally not there. It literally isn't there at all. It's just a figment of my imagination, and it's keeping me afraid, and it's making me put on this armor of pride that keeps me from getting the help that I need. Okay? So, and like learning to love ourselves too. Like, loving the insecure little self isn't going to do anything, but we want to learn to love ourselves in authentic ways. Like, what I do is I think about my spiritual potential, right? We all have a spiritual potential. We have the potential for limitless love and peace and happiness and joy and freedom and wisdom and compassion and power, spiritual power. We have the capacity for limitless amounts of all these good qualities: limitless faith and compassion and joy and abundance, bliss, inner abundance. Like, these are all inner qualities, and we have the capacity or potential for limitless amounts of all of them. And that's my potential. It's like a seed. It's not fully developed. Like, I don't believe, I think it's crazy to believe that we're like fully enlightened already. That's not a truth. That's a helpful way of thinking occasionally, but it's not strictly true, right? What's true is that we have limitless potential for full enlightenment and for all these things. And it's more like a seed. It's not an oak tree. We're not fully developed. Someone who's fully enlightened doesn't suffer. They have perfect energy to help others. They never waver in just trying to help others. They have power to emanate countless bodies and countless forms. They can't die. Their bodies are made of light. They know everything. They can be all places. They are all places simultaneously at all times. They have miracle. Like, there's no debate if we're enlightened or not. Like, if you are, then you know that you are. You don't need anyone to tell you. But if you have any questions at all about it, it means you're not. And so we're not the oak tree, but we're the acorn. We are partially developed, and we can cherish this self. We can love this self. We can try to ripen this self. We can protect this self. That's what boundaries are, right? We can try to keep our spiritual potential, safe. Keep our lifestyle conditions safe, right? What does boundaries mean? When people talk about boundaries, a lot of times they're talking about what they allow other people to do to them and how they allow other people to treat them. And there's a time and place for that, but I don't believe that that's what boundaries are. And that's not how I practice boundaries. For me, a boundary is a decision. A boundary is an energetic decision about what you will or won't allow in your life. But strictly speaking, like, the best type of decision is a decision about our own behavior and our own speech, our own ways of thinking. These are boundaries too. And so whenever we used to do retreats, we would start the retreat by developing our retreat boundaries. Here are the things I'm not going to do during a retreat. Okay, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to steal. I'm not going to covet other people's partners or possessions. I'm not going to have jealousy. I'm not going to check my email more than twice a day if I'm on retreat. I'm not going to look at my phone at all, except for, after, whatever, right after lunch. Or, I'm not going to talk in the morning if I'm on retreat. Maybe I don't talk all the way up until lunchtime. Maybe I decide that I'm not going to use my electronics or anything other than essential things, but only during these hours. Maybe I decide that I'm not going to have any alcohol or any substances besides, what I need, and possibly caffeine, right? Maybe on retreat, I'm not going to speak harshly to people, So these are retreat boundaries. I'm not gonna skip a session just because I don't feel like it. I have 4 sessions a day, or 3 or 2 sessions per day that I'm going to be doing, like spiritual retreat sessions. My boundary is I'm not going to miss any sessions, right? I'm barring, a death, barring my own death or something, I'm not going to miss any sessions, right? And in retreat, you can have very strict boundaries because it's for a finite period of time. If you're doing a 1-week retreat, or a 2-day retreat, or a 5-day, or a 10-day, or a 1 month or a 6-month retreat, the boundaries can be more intense because you know that you get to come out of them soon. So you don't take these boundaries for your lifestyle in general that much. We try to be a little bit more flexible in our normal lifestyle, but in a retreat, you can have strict boundaries. You can say, I'm not going to talk at all during my retreat. I did a 5-week silent, solitary retreat where people brought me my meals in a tin every day. And I was basically in a modern day cave. This was the best time of my life, right? Being completely by myself, silent for 5 weeks. It was more like a 9-week spiritual kind of trip, spiritual excursion that included 6 weeks of silent retreat, and 5 of those weeks I was by myself. And so this is a type of a boundary. And in some contexts, that's the right boundary. In some contexts, that's not the right boundary. But this is when I say boundary, that's what I mean mostly. It's control of our own activities, our own behavior. We say, I'm not going to do this, I will do this, but I won't do this, right? We won't allow ourselves to do certain things. That's the real boundary. And it feels like a force field. When you have a boundary, it feels like you make a force field around your life. Here's a cool way to start a boundary. I love to put a little boundary around all my meditation practices. Every time that I meditate, say it's 20 minutes, it is actually helpful to set a timer. You don't have to, but it is helpful. And then you decide, during this meditation, I'm not going to think about anything else, and I'm only going to focus on this meditation. And I'm going to enjoy it, actually. I'm going to try to enjoy this meditation without thinking about anything else during this time, right? You cannot make that decision for your whole life. You can't say, for my whole life, I'm just going to think about my breath, and I'm not going to focus on anything else. That you can't live like that. But during a 20-minute session, you can have a tight boundary of this is what I'm going to do. And so when you make that boundary, you put a force field around the practice, and it keeps all your energy inside, and it keeps the bad influences outside, right? And if you were to do a retreat for 1 day, you would do the same. You'd put a force field around the day. For today, I'm only going to do these things. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this. And I'm going to do this, right? And then now you have a force field. It keeps the bad energy out, the unconducive energy for retreat out, and it keeps all your good energy in, right? The boundary is what allows you to build enormous energy. That's why retreats function so well. And that's why someone living a conscious lifestyle with ethical boundaries develops enormous energy. If you talk to people who make it in life, a lot of them have extremely strict, high level, a lot of times conscious boundaries. I know a lot of spiritual people don't want to admit that wealthy, powerful people have conscious habits, but a lot of them do have conscious habits. It's so sad that powerful, wealthy people are painted as the villains a lot of times. But that's just fear mentality. It's not actually true. There's a lot of very conscious people, and you have to be pretty conscious to get to the top, and you at least need to have boundaries on your activities, because it keeps all your good juju on the inside, all your mojo, all your energy, the chi, the prana. It keeps it all in, and it keeps the bad stuff out, right? Someone who's wealthy and powerful and whatever, highly accomplished, they're not super accessible, right? You can't just text them. Imagine their life if anyone could just text them or just come over and visit. They have force fields, they have boundaries, and that's quite physical, but we can think of it mentally too, energetically. And so the main boundary we need is boundaries on our own behavior, and you can think of them like force fields. Okay, so hopefully that's clear. By practicing the right boundaries, it will be difficult for other people to harm us. And one boundary or decision we can make is, I'm going to bring light into every area of my life. I'm not going to let a single pocket of darkness remain. Anytime I see an area of darkness or fear, I'm going to courageously explore it and shine the light in, bring the light of awareness inside to try to find what is there, what is lurking in the darkness, because what is lurking in the darkness is a fear of something that doesn't exist, or essentially it's a mental image of something that doesn't exist. There's a mental image in the darkness of something that doesn't exist, and it's projected by our own mind. But how could you continue to project it if the darkness wasn't there, right? The thing is, it feels real. It feels extremely real. It feels realer than real. It's like the realest thing that you can get is how it feels. But only because there's so much darkness that it can be sustained. If you take the darkness away with light, you can't continue to believe in it, and the fear disappears immediately. Okay? So this is a courageous mindfulness practice that we can all do, and that could be a boundary that you have. Like, I'm not going to leave any stone unturned, and if someone tries to control me with fear, I'm going to lean in. I'm going to face them. I'm not going to run away. I'm not going to get scared. I'm not going to come up with some victim sob story about how I was abused and poor me, whiny. That's what a lot of empaths do. They become victims, but it's just them avoiding the conflict is what it is. And I understand, especially when women go toe-to-toe with men, it can feel very challenging because men have the upper hand in a lot of ways. And so we need to create distance. So a boundary in this case would be creating some distance. Just like Jeff Bezos, you can't contact him via text, right? You can't, you can't just come over his house. He has boundaries, he has physical boundaries, and we do need physical boundaries too. When I lived at the temple in the middle of the woods, I had physical boundaries. I was in the middle of the woods. I didn't check my phone for like days at a time. For a while, I didn't have a phone. I didn't have internet for a while. I had it on my computer, but I wasn't looking at it, and I didn't have a smartphone for a long time. And physical boundaries are a good thing. I spent a lot of time there, and I made a lot of progress. And so if you're dealing with someone who's a narcissist, you want to put in as many boundaries as you need so that you don't get harmed. That's the point, is you put as many boundaries as you need so that you can't get harmed. But then once there's enough boundaries, I want you to lean in and face it. Don't run away. Don't create a sob story. Don't be a victim. Because people will support you. People will be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. This happened to me too, and me too. It's going to be another me too thing. And you're going to feel validated, and then you're going to snap out of it, and you're going to realize, God, this sucks. And then you're going to think, well, what can I do about it? And here's what you can do about it. You can lean in, you can look at it, and you can realize that the only areas where they're controlling you are the areas where you have fear and darkness. And you can make it your mission to eliminate the fear and darkness, and you can do both of you a favor and expose everything that there is to expose about the situation. So, what does that mean? It means what is the thing that they don't want? If you want to see a narcissist run away in terror, threaten to expose them to the public or to somebody and shatter their fragile little self-image. That's how you get leverage on a narcissist. They are also controlled by fear. They huff and puff and they appear so scary. Trust me, they are more scary than most, actually. How else could they smell fear and why else would they use it against you if they weren't also extremely controlled by it? I'm making you a promise. Narcissists are very afraid and they do not want to be exposed. That is the ultimate leverage you have against a narcissist, is threatening to expose them. Okay? So they're going to laugh it off and ha ha ha, don't, they're going to pretend like it doesn't get to them. Trust me, it's the biggest fear. Okay? It's the biggest fear that they have. So that's your leverage. And the only reason that you won't do that is that you're afraid also. You're afraid. You're afraid of being exposed. You're afraid of the repercussions. You're afraid of being criticized. You're afraid of taking blame. You're afraid of them lashing out. Or maybe you're afraid of what people will think about you. You also have a narcissistic streak in the case where you are afraid of being exposed. Right? If you are like, no, I don't want to expose them because they'll expose me, and then if I expose them, then I'll expose myself at the same time. Well, good. You need to get over your fear anyway. There's something that you're believing that isn't there, and so you may as well expose it so that you can realize sooner that there's nothing to be scared of. I promise you, this is what happens. When you expose things, you realize that the thing that you were afraid of wasn't actually there. But you cannot realize that until you bring the light in, which is what exposing means. Okay? So if you want no one to have power over you, just have zero fear about what you expose. Okay? I'm making you a promise to my best ability. This is how I understand things. And again, you only have one life. We only have this life. Yeah, there's future lives, but like in this life, if you were to live your life and still have fear about being exposed intact, like how horrible is that? Like that's the worst delusion to die with. You want to do your best. You want to bring as much light in as you can. Don't wait. Trust me, it doesn't get easier. This is the work. This is why anxious avoidant people end up with narcissists, because we have a tendency to avoid the work. We're like, oh, let me just distract myself with this thing so I don't have to do the work. Oh, let me go be spiritual for 10 years while I avoid the actual thing that would make progress. If you just do this one thing, you'll become free. Why would you not become free? You're going to choose to like, any spiritual practice that you do while avoiding the thing that you need to do is masturbation, basically. It's not exactly the same, but it's essentially that's what you're doing, is you're just like jerking off. You're just like getting some stimulation and stroking your ego while which you kind of need to do that in order to not feel horrible for the fact that you're avoiding the thing that you need to do, which is just come clean. Just expose, just open your heart, right? No one can control you if you're not afraid of anything. Okay, so that's my lesson about that. So this video went on kind of long. I have all these other topics that I want to share, but I guess I'll do that in other videos. All right, talk to you later. Have a great day. Hopefully you subscribe. Hopefully you got value. Please share this around. I can't wait to talk to you again.